Hey, it is your agent Queenie. So, what happened? What happened after June 11th, right? So, if you saw my previous video around December, January about the rental market, there has been some theories that I had, right? That right after June 11th, rents are going to hike. There's going to be a good amount of loopholes and shady practices. And I'd love to hear what you guys saw in terms of shady practices. I'm going to cover it because I've seen enough as well, and it kind of hurts to see it. But shady practices and then eventual normalization of these rents, right? So there's always a cause and effect with everything. So I will say after 6 years of doing this, analyzing this market, this is what I have to say, right? So North Brooklyn, let's say Park Slope, South Slope, Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Bushwick, Crown Heights, these areas had a significant demand for rentals, right? And you're paying premium rents over there. Flatbush as well. So these areas, partially also because of developments and luxury housing, they are used to management companies offering no-fee apartments. They might take care of the agent, but the agent can negotiate on their commission on that. But I think for these reasons, the inventory in those areas stayed the same, right? It's still a substantial amount of inventory, and there might have been a slight increase in rents because the majority of the rental market increased, right? So there's a slight increase there and a continuous amount of inventory, right? So what happened in markets like Sunset Park, Bay Ridge, Diker Heights, Midwood, Kings Highway, Sheepshead Bay, Coney Island, Gravesend, Bensonhurst. Did I say Diker Heights? Diker Heights, Marine Park, East Flatbush. These areas are very, very small landlords, majority of them. Of course, the luxury buildings with very, very high rents compared to their market, right? Where the market rent is maybe 50% more or 70% more than other apartments. They've always been no fee, right? And there's a very niche clientele that's into that. But majority of the market are seeing, one, either rentals that are limited on Zillow, online, incredibly sparse, or they are listed in ways where there can be a loophole, right? They'd be like, hey, I listed this, but you got to talk to this agent, and that agent will represent you. So they get you to sign an agreement stating that the agent is representing you, that you are going to pay the fee, and maybe you're sold because there's really not that many apartments on market. And you're saying, hey, maybe I'm getting a good rent and I'm paying the fee. So there's been agents doing this practice, where they make you sign this. There's been agents who work as teams doing this, if that makes sense. So you're like, who's this? I didn't call this person. Who is this person I'm talking to now? Now they're saying I have to pay them a fee. What's going on? So that's what I've noticed on the market. So keep in mind with that kind of scenario, it's shady. I've also seen listings of apartments that are not even available. They're just there to collect leads. They're there to see your phone number and be like, hey, you called for this apartment? Well, it's pending. It's not available, but I have 3 more, but they're not listed and I'm not representing the owner. So if you're interested, I can represent you and you can see all of these apartments. You can take any of these and I'll charge you on them. Whatever else you want to do, not my problem. So they might bind you into an agreement like that. If you go on Reddit, you'll see certain comments, which I've been also tracking because I'm very intrigued, that there are agents who would basically do that, switch and bait with them and then get them to sign an agreement. And there's some people who worry, hey, are they making me commit to them no matter what apartment I get? So if I get an apartment, not from this agent, but through another agent, will I still have to pay that other agent a fee, even though they're not connected to this other agent? They didn't help me scout it, but I signed that paper. So be careful what you sign, And secondly, what I found is that July, there's a lot of negotiation. So in June, we had a drop in inventory. What happens when you have a drop in inventory? There's an illusion that there's not much inventory, there's less people looking, or there's desperation that, hey, there's not that many apartments. This is my only chance. There's 100 people reaching out about this. So that was June, and there was crazy prices in June. Why? Because agents did, in fact, price their commission into the rent. Or there were those listings, those ghost listings where they're switch and bait you. So be mindful when you see those listings online. You'll see how many days they're on market, and you can kind of get an idea. Even Google voice message them and see what they say. See if their story changes. But that's one thing I've noticed. And then July. July was very interesting. In July, I've noticed that inventory continues to be very sparse, but rents went down. People are negotiating really, really hard. Yeah, and I've also noticed international students are getting extorted. Literally, they're paying fees on units that are listed online. And almost all of them that I spoke to, they're like, what? This is no fee? Really? And I'm like, did you know about the law? They're like, no. So agents that are taking advantage of people who don't know about law changes, whether they're students or not, when people don't know about this and you're taking advantage, it will come around, right? They will find that trick, they'll have that track record, and they will fight for their money back. Money that you work hard for is money you work hard for. Like, if it's not what you're supposed to be doing, don't do it, right? If you had a unit you listed before June 11th, and then you're like, you know what, I'm not going to represent this person anymore. It's going to become an open listing. I'll represent the tenant if they're interested in taking this apartment, and I'll negotiate on their behalf. Okay, in that case, do the proper paperwork, and then you can charge your fee, right? But post June 11th, you have to be very careful and also understand what's going on, right? So let's say you do want to negotiate on an apartment and you like it. Talk to the agent, be transparent, and study the market. You should know what's a good deal and what's not. But if you really want to lock something in, and then the other agent's like, hey, this is an open listing, there's a bunch of agents on it, I'll represent you on it, and I'll negotiate for you, you can pay the fee, but we'll make sure that, you benefit. Then go for it, But yeah, it's been a very interesting market, and all I can say is negotiate. There's been a dip in rents, and one of the reasons I think there is a dip in rent is because of inflation, right? The economy's been rough. Cost of living everywhere, and especially New York, has gone up, and it keeps going up. So it's a tough market. So I can't imagine, like, if I was to tell you folks how many credit reports I've seen in the last 2 years where people are in substantial debt, even if they have a fair amount of income, there's so many households whose incomes haven't gone up. Hardworking people, and their incomes just don't go up. So it's a very devastating thing. And when we talk about, oh, no broker fee, you think you're fixing a problem, but you're not. The deepest problem we have is inequities in labor, right? And how people are paid. There's a lot. There's health burdens. There's so much to the equation of how we can better people's lives. But this alleviation of the broker fee, I think all it did was, if someone can afford even paying extra rent and having an agent, they might be winning, right? If someone can afford to, one who also is just more like tech savvy, they're able to reach out and get into a unit and pitch themselves and negotiate, and also hire this other agent on their behalf and get it done. It's like you're well resourced to do it. But it still feels like with these high rents and getting no fee, it's like you can afford to move. That's kind of why you don't mind taking a no fee apartment with a higher rent, because maybe you get better amenities, you get a more exclusive experience in securing that apartment. But again, other families who can't afford to sustain that rent on the long term will never secure that apartment, even if they had to pay a broker fee up front. It wouldn't matter because they're thinking long term. So this is the reality of the broker fee law. I think it hurts families that are long term, and it costs them a lot more money, and yeah, it's unnecessary. But there needs to be a lot of education around the southern Brooklyn, because we didn't alleviate a housing problem. I think we just created more kind of narrowing of choices, keeping things very quiet when you're renting. When you're public, there's a lot more opportunity for everyone to come in and shoot their shots. But when it's quiet and exclusive because you're worried about upfront cost as a landlord and you don't want to pay a fee, one, they have limited exposure, but it can also create a gap in who is being welcomed into that space, right? It might just be locals, but how about other people, right? So yeah, things to think about. There's a lot of ways to get things done, but I don't know. How did it go for you? I want to know.